So forgive me, I'm not actually like that knowledgeable about the history of attempts of building social networks to solve the problem that you're solving. But I was made aware that there was an app or at least a social network called Yik Yak that had a similar kind of focus. I think the thing you've spoken about that differs between Librex and Yik Yak is that Yik Yak was defined. Am I pronouncing it right? Even
You're good.
I'm good.
I met the founder, so I can confirm.
You can confirm. Cool. That it was constrained to a geographical area versus like to the actual community, and that somehow had fundamental like actual differences in social dynamics that resulted. But can you speak to the history of Yik Yak? Like, how does Librex differ? What lessons have you learned from that? Oh, and I should say that I guess there was controversial. I don't know. I didn't look at the details, but I'm guessing there's a bunch of racism and hate speech and all that kind of stuff that
Absolutely,
emerged
there was
on Yik Yak. Okay, so that's an example of like, okay, here's how it goes wrong when you have anonymity on college campuses. So how does Librex going to do better?
Yeah, you guys got a lot of problems, content problems, but the content problems go deeper than maybe what the press would reveal. There's a lot to say, and part of it is parsing exactly what to talk about when it comes to Yik Yak. And when you talk about startups, I mean, you know this, you know startups, and you look at the postmortem, it's almost never what people think it is. And oftentimes these things are somewhat unknowable. And the degree to which people seeking confirmation bias, to some degree, seeking closure, look to find a singular attribute that caused the failure.
It feels like the little details often make all the difference.
Yes. And I think the details are so little that as humans, we are not capable of parsing even what they are. But I'll tell you my perspective on it, knowing that I am also a human with biases. In this particular case, very significant biases. Right?
Yeah.
So I started building Librex for its own merits. I at first I wasn't aware of Yik Yak, but as I started to talk to people about this platform I was building, I was made aware of Yik Yak, and I built it from day one with a lot of the issues Yik Yak had in mind. So as you said, the one difference between Yik Yak is the geographical versus community-based aspect. Going along with that, one thing I realized by researching social media sites is that the majority of the negative content, the content that's terrible and breaking all the rules, is created by and the people who are not reformable, so to speak, the people who are not showing the best part of the human experience.
Yeah.
It's a really small minority, right?
Yeah.
I remember I was listening to the founder of 4chan Moot talk about this, how like one guy was able to basically destroy like large swaths of his community.
Yeah. That's part of what makes it exciting for that minority is how much power they can have. So if you're predisposed to think in this way, it's exciting that you can walk into, like I mentioned the party before. You have a party of a lot of positive people, and it feels, especially if you don't have much power in this world, it feels exceptionally empowering to just to destroy like the lives of many. And if you think this way, it's a problem. But I'm hopeful that you're right, that in most cases it's going to be a minority of people.
I think it is, and that's what the research has showed. And one really powerful thing is that we can really actively control who comes in and out of our community based on the .edu verification. And we can also control who's not in our community because we have that lever where each account is associated with a .edu. So that's the first point I would point out there. Second point is controlled expansion, meaning that we have community moderation. We have this panel that allows the moderators to see all of the highly downvoted content, all of the reported content, all the flagged content, and look through it and decide what they like and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And we have We ping every moderator when there's a report, so things are taken down pretty quickly. And we have our standards, and we have, I think above all of that, we have a mission, and it's a community-based mission. Yik Yak was more of a fun app, and by its own admission, it was a place where people could enjoy themselves and could sort of yak.
Yeah.
Yik Yak, chit chat. We have a bigger purpose than that, frankly. And I think that shows in the people who self-select to be on that app, to be on Librex, and to be on Yik Yak, respectively. The last thing I'll say is Yik Yak was very few characters. It was a Twitter-esque platform. And that doesn't allow for a tremendous amount of nuance. It doesn't allow for a tremendous amount of conversation. Librex is much more long form. And so the kind of posts that you'll get on Librex can span pages. They're like, what people are starting to realize is that they can reach a lot more people at a lot more pertinent of a time, a lot more quickly by posting their thoughts on Librex than if they went to their school newspaper. And I think the school newspapers might be a little worried about that. But more importantly, we're connecting people in this way where long form communication with nuance that takes into account everything that's happening in the community temporally is really available at Librex, and not really communicable in 240 or 480 or whatever the number of characters the yaks were bound to. And then I could talk about the history of Yik Yak if you want me to go further. They started I think they were at 12 schools, and then spring break hit. People told their friends, look at this app. 1,000 schools signed up and had active communities. They had a problem on their hands.
I see.
And then the high schools come on board.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things you said ring true to me, but especially the vision one, which I do think having a vision in the leadership, having a mission makes all the difference in the world. That's both for the engineers that are building, like the team that's building the app, the moderation, and users, because the mission carries itself through the behavior of the people on the social network.